Greetings. I am Reverend Amy Moses Lagos, and it is my great privilege to serve as the minister at Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church, or as we refer to it, BBUUC. I use the pronouns she and her. Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church is located on the ancestral land of the Timucuan people. I want to offer you a warm welcome to our Sunday morning worship service. This is a community of open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We are coming to you from our YouTube channel. It is one of the many ways we are staying connected during this time of social distancing. We will continue to offer virtual worship programming until we can safely resume services in our church sanctuary. In addition to worship, we are continuing other opportunities to connect through our Zoom platform, including classes, small group ministries, and more. Keep an eye on the church website, calendar, Facebook page, and your email for more information on the various ways we can be the keepers of the flame with the inner connection, care, and love that is at the heart of our Unitarian Universalist faith. On this Sunday, June 13th, we dedicate our chalice lighting to the victims of the Pulse nightclub mass shooting that occurred in Orlando on June 12, 2016. 49 people were killed and 53 more were wounded. The majority of the victims were Latino, Latina, and Latinx members of the LGBTQ community. In remembrance, I offer these words written by Lisa Doji. Why a flaming chalice? The question comes. It's the cup of life, we answer. A cup of blessings overflowing. A cup of water to quench our spirit's thirst. A cup of wine for celebration and dedication. The flame of truth. The fire of purification. Oil for anointing, healing. Out of chaos, fear, and horror, thus was the symbol crafted a generation ago. So may it be for us in these days of uncertainty, sorrow, and rage, and a light to warm our souls and guide us home.
Hello, and welcome to our Wonder Box. I wonder what could be in our box today. Let's see. It's a statue of the Buddha. The Buddha used stories to help people learn to be still and listen to the voice that lives within them. You know, that small, still voice you hear in your head, the one that helps you make decisions. The Wise Teacher's Test is a story like that. This version that I want to share with you today comes from our UUA Tapestry of Faith collection. And it begins a long time ago on the outskirts of a big city in Japan, where there stood an old temple. And from a young age, boys who wanted to study Buddhism would come to live in the temple and learn from the master teacher, a Buddhist monk. One day, the Buddhist monk who ran the small temple decided to teach his young students a lesson. He gathered them all around him and spoke. "My dear students, as you can see, I am growing old and slow. I can no longer provide for the needs of the temple as I once did. I know I have not yet taught you to work for money, and so I can only think of one thing that can keep our school from closing." The students drew close with wide eyes. "Our nearby city is full of wealthy people with more money in their purses than they ever could need. I want you to go into the city and follow those rich people as they walk the crowded streets. And when they walk down the deserted alleyways, when no one's looking, and only when no one is looking, you must steal their purses. That way we will have enough money to keep our school alive." "But Master," the boys chorused in disbelief, "you have taught us that it is wrong to take anything that does not belong to us." "Yes, indeed I have," the old monk replied. "It would be wrong to steal if it were not absolutely necessary. And remember, you must not be seen, If anyone can see you, you must not steal. Do you understand?" The boys looked nervously from one to the other. Had their beloved teacher gone mad? His eyes shone with an intensity such as they had never seen before. "Yes, master," they said quietly. "Good," he said. "Now go. And remember, you must not be seen." The boys got up and quietly began to file out of the temple building. The old monk rose slowly and watched them go. And when he turned back inside, he saw that one student was still standing quietly in the corner of the room. "Why did you not go with the others?" he asked. "Do you not want to help save our temple?" "I do, master," the boy said quietly. "But you said that we had to steal without being seen. I know that there is no place on earth that I would not be seen, for I would always see myself." "Excellent!" exclaimed the teacher. "That is just the lesson that I hoped my students would learn. But you were the one to see it. Run and tell your friends to return to the temple before they get us all into trouble." The boy ran and got his friends, who were nervously gathered just out of sight of the temple, trying to decide what to do. When they returned, the master told them the words the boy had spoken, and they all understood the lesson. No matter what we do, we always have a part of ourselves that is quietly watching and that knows right from wrong and can guide us if we listen to its small, quiet voice. I wonder, when have you heard that small, quiet voice that lives inside of you? How can you honor its wisdom? And with this, our story is told. Until the next time.
This is the time in our service when we pause to create sacred space in our hearts. We pause to reflect on the recent days with joys, sorrows, fears, gratitude, and love. We recall the milestones, the changes in our lives, and those who need healing our healing thoughts. Our community is deepened by sharing. We light a candle of joy for the name changes for the 6 schools in Duval County. And we light a candle of joy that our brother Ken Christensen is recovering from his knee surgery. And we light a candle for all other joys and concerns that have not been mentioned. During these challenging times that we're experiencing, we realize just how important it is to journey through this together as a faith community. Let us hold one another in our hearts. Let us be filled with kindness and grace. Let us lift up our prayers, hopes, and prayers for one another. Let us reach out in solitude and remember that we all need connection, whether it's a call, a card, an email, a text. Know too that your congregation is here for you should you find yourself in need of comfort or help.
One day, you finally knew what you had to do and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles. "Mend my life," each voice cried, but you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save.
The purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather there to grow more generous in spirit and action. While our sanctuary is closed, we remind ourselves that our church is more than the building where we meet. We are the congregation, and even in times of difficulty, when we aren't able to be with one another, we remain committed to supporting our mission and ministry, our staff and facility, and our shared values. During the month of June, we are contributing to all the funds from our virtual plate offering to the Rainbow Railroad. Rainbow Railroad is a global not for profit organization that helps LGBTQI people facing persecution based on their sexual orientation, gender identification, and sex characteristics. As a result of Rainbow Railroad, more LGBTQI individuals will be able to access lives free from persecution. Since its founding, Rainbow Railroad has helped over 1,600 LGBTQI individuals find safety through emergency location and other forms of assistance. You can give through the PayPal link found on our YouTube channel. Your gifts are greatly and deeply appreciated.
In 1771, a 21-year-old young adult named Caleb Rich, who had grown up in the Baptist church, had a series of mystical visions that led him to believe in the idea of universal salvation for all people, before there was even a religion called Universalism. In one of his initial visions, he heard a still small voice, which said to him, "Your motive is from selfish principles, for fear of future and endless misery. You always have been and now are excited to pray from the same false motives." Caleb Rich understood this message to mean that when people did good deeds only because they were scared of going to hell if they didn't, their motives were selfish. Rich writes this about the vision as it continued, quote, "A great calm overspread my mind and my passions all subsided. Instantly I saw a vision," end quote. A celestial guide appeared who showed him an incomplete stone wall and told him that he was the stone, quote, "placed by unerring wisdom into God's building before the foundation of the world," end quote. In his visions, Rich felt a close connection to God and experienced what he understood to be God's love for all people. His visions led him to believe in the universalist idea that after death, all people would be saved and go to heaven, not just an elect few. His visions bolstered his confidence in his universalist beliefs and encouraged him to share those beliefs with others. After experiencing his initial visions, Caleb Rich was so excited to share his religious experiences with the elders at his Baptist church to discuss their meaning with them. But when he did, they responded by expelling him from the church. The Baptists were appalled by Universalist beliefs. The doctrine of eternal punishment was an important part of their theology, and they believed that abandoning this doctrine would lead to moral degeneracy. Rich must certainly have been discouraged by this response from the elders, but he was not deterred from preaching his message of God's universal love for all people. He continued to preach the message to those who would listen. He organized 2 Universalist churches in New Hampshire and 1 in Massachusetts, and he was ordained as the minister at all 3. He played a critical role in spreading Universalist ideas in New England. In his visions, Caleb Rich heard a still small voice that brought the message that there is a loving God and that no one would suffer eternal punishment in the afterlife. Caleb Rich listened to this still small voice and paid attention to the visions he experienced. These experiences led him to speak with courage to the Baptist elders at great personal cost. Rich realized that his life of participating in the Baptist church was not in line with his truest and highest values. The still small voice of his visions gave him the courage and conviction to lead a life of integrity in line with his highest values. When I learned about Caleb Rich, I was so excited to know that there was a Universalist leader who had such a rich spiritual life that informed his ministry. Today, one of the sources that Unitarian Universalist congregations affirm and promote is direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces that create and uphold life. Rich's life and legacy can inspire us to consider how we pay attention to our own inner wisdom to make decisions in life with integrity and authenticity. Some may call this inner wisdom a conscience, or the voice of God, or an inner guide. Regardless of our name for the wisdom, I believe it has much to teach us. Like Caleb Rich, we can take time to consider the deepest truths of our lives and follow the path of courage and conviction to live out our values in the world. But there is so much noise in the world. There's so many distractions, and they make it hard to hear our inner voice. How do we listen closely for that inner teacher? How do we pay attention to our conscience? Our Unitarian Universalist principles call us to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. For many Unitarian Universalists, part of that free and responsible search for truth and meaning is creating space where we can listen closely to our inner teacher as we make choices in life. Those ways of creating space will look different for everyone. For myself, long walks, prayer and meditation, and being in nature all help me to discern my inner truth. I understand a spiritual practice to be something that helps us connect with ourselves and connect with something beyond us. It might be painting, running, dream journaling, or spending time with animals. In the Buddhist tradition, meditation is a way to find wisdom and insight. In Hinduism, the path of yoga leads to the wisdom of nirvana. All of these practices can help us to cultivate an inner wisdom that can support us in living a life with integrity and meaning. Listening to one's inner voice and following that guidance to make decisions with integrity can be very challenging, and it is often easier to ignore that inner wisdom. I remember when I was in my third year of seminary, I was having a hard time deciding what to do the next year. The school's guidance counselor encouraged me to apply for parish internships in the area. Another possibility was to do a year-long residency working as a chaplain in a hospital. It seemed like all of my classmates were hurrying to apply for their internships or residencies. I felt incredible pressure to start putting together my applications. I also was feeling overwhelmed by the stress of the coursework I was taking and the many volunteer commitments I had taken on. In the midst of this feeling of overwhelm, I slowed down. I took my dog for walks in Golden Gate Park. I went to my yoga class. I spoke with my spiritual director about possibilities for the future. I had joined with a group of other women who were in seminary to meet on a regular basis to check in and reflect about how our lives were going. I spoke to this group about the stresses I was feeling, and they responded with compassionate listening and presence. Taking this time to slow down helped me to listen to my own inner voice about where I was called to go next. In my own understanding of that experience, I was nurturing my connection to a sacred and holy presence and making the choice that felt in alignment with that presence. I realized I didn't feel ready to start a parish internship. I also realized that my call to ministry was not to hospital chaplaincy, and so it didn't make sense to do a year-long chaplaincy position. I discerned that the right decision was to stay in seminary one more year. In order to make that decision, I had to set aside concerns of my ego. I admired my classmates who seemed to zip through seminary and rush into their internship work, but I knew it wasn't helpful to try and go at their pace. I realized we were all on our own journey to ministry in our own way. I needed time to slow down and allow myself to integrate everything I had learned up to that point. Only by quieting my mind and letting go of the outside voices and pressures was I able to make the choice that was the right one for me. Another critical part of this process was talking to my spiritual director, my group of female seminary students, and other trusted friends and family members. These conversations helped me reflect and sort out the many pulls that I felt in my life. The conversations helped me distinguish between the various metaphorical voices in my head. Which were the voices of ego? Which were the voices of society's expectations? Which were the voices that I could really trust? Friends who asked open and honest questions helped me to follow the true path of my heart and make the best decision for myself and my family. Shortly after I made this decision, I learned about a program of the Unitarian Universalist Legislative Ministry of California. The UULM had a grant to hire seminarian organizers for healthcare reform. They were looking for seminary students to work with congregations to educate and advocate around healthcare issues. When I saw the announcement, I knew the position was perfect for me. It was the chance I needed to work in a congregation on an issue that I cared about and have the chance to do theological reflection about that work. When I made the decision to stay in school another year, I didn't know that this opportunity would present itself. I had faith that I was going in the right direction, even though I didn't know what lay ahead. Once I took the step of doing what was right for me in my heart, the right opportunity appeared around the corner. Caleb Rich had the courage and the conviction to preach his beliefs of God's universal love for all people at a time when the dominant theology was one of fear and punishment. The visions he received gave him confidence in his beliefs and led him to share his message of love with the people around him, nourishing the beginnings of the Universalist movement in the United States. His legacy offers us an example of someone whose inner spiritual life helped him to live his life with truth and integrity and to impact others in a positive way. I believe we can find inspiration in his life experience to seek truth in diverse and creative ways. Guided meditation, dream journaling, writing, and creating art are just a few of the varied ways Unitarian Universalists can cultivate inner wisdom to help in making important life decisions. At the same time, we believe in the importance of encouraging one another in spiritual growth. We don't make decisions alone. We can share our hearts with one another, and these conversations help us to sort out the many influences on our discernment process, helping us to find the path that is the most true and right. May we each cultivate our own inner wisdom through practices that are energizing and life giving. May we share from our hearts with one another and receive those sacred offerings with love and compassion. May we each have the courage to live a life in line with our values. And may the path of our hearts be one that brings more joy, healing, and transformation into the world. May it be so. Amen.
Voice still and small, deep inside out, I hear you call, singing in dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you singing. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
Our closing words are written by Barbara Hamilton Hallway. Go now in peace. Deeply regard each other. Truly listen to each other. Speak what each of you must speak. Be ready in any moment to disarm your own heart and always live as if a realm of love had begun. So be it. Blessed be.